The morning sun filters through Mother's precious lace curtains, casting delicate shadows across the medical papers trembling in my hands. I sit perfectly straight on the antique settee, my spine rigid against the floral upholstery, while the grandfather clock in the corner marks each excruciating second. Tick, tick, tick. My parents perch across from me on matching wingback chairs, their faces composed as if we're discussing the weather instead of my death sentence. Father adjusts his reading glasses, scrutinizing the treatment plan with the same detached interest he shows quarterly earnings reports. The treatment costs $58,000. His words slice through the silence. We've run the numbers, Dana. Logan's tuition comes first. The papers slip from my fingers, scattering across the oriental rug like fallen leaves. My throat constricts, but I force myself to meet his gaze. Princeton can wait a semester. This can't. Mother leans forward, hands clasped in her lap, her pearl necklace catching the light. Your brother's future can't be jeopardized. Her voice carries the same gentle tone she uses when explaining obvious things to slow students. You understand that, don't you? Understanding floods through me like ice water in my veins. They've calculated my worth against Logan's degree and found me wanting. The realization settles in my stomach, heavy as stone. From upstairs, Logan's guitar strings vibrate with carefree chords. He's probably sprawled across his bed, practicing for the coffeehouse performance he's been talking about all week. My beloved brother, whose C+ in advanced chemistry earned a celebratory dinner at Le Petit Bistro, while my perfect SAT scores warranted only a distracted, "That's nice, dear," over breakfast. I swallow hard, surprised by how steady my voice sounds. What are my options? Father brightens, clearly relieved I'm being practical instead of hysterical. The county hospital has payment plans, or you could defer treatment until after Logan graduates. Dr. Carter says, Benjamin Carter? The name triggers a cascade of memories, the distinguished college consultant in his tweed jackets, holding court in our living room over Mother's sugar cookies, discussing Logan's extraordinary potential while I served tea like a ghost. He's been incredibly helpful with Logan's applications, Mother says, beaming. Such connections he has. Did you know he just placed the Henderson boy at Yale? My hands curl into fists, nails biting into my palms. So you discussed my illness with him? We had to explain why we couldn't contribute to his annual education symposium this year. Fatone suggests this should be obvious. The timing is unfortunate, but Logan's placement has to be our priority. I stand, my legs surprisingly steady. I need time to think. Relief washes over their faces. They expect me to retreat to my room, process this betrayal quietly, then emerge accepting my role as the expendable child, just as I've always done. That's very mature of you, Dana. Mother rises too, smoothing her skirt. Your father and I have consultations all afternoon. We can discuss this more at dinner. I watch them disappear into their home office, the heavy oak door closing behind them with a soft click. Through the walls, I hear their muffled voices mixing with keyboard clatter as they return to their work, advising other parents on securing their children's futures. My future stretches before me like a dark tunnel, growing narrower by the second. I climb the stairs to my bedroom, each step carrying the weight of years of invisible wounds. The college fund discussions that only mentioned Logan, the family photos where I stand slightly apart, the proud parental smiles reserved for my brother's mediocre achievements while my excellence earned only absent nods. Sitting on my bed, I pull out my phone and scroll through saved numbers until I find one from an old birthday card. Aunt Diane, the family's black sheep, who fled to Colorado Springs years ago. Mother says she lacks ambition, but I remember her warm hugs and the way she actually listened when I talked. My fingers hover over her number as Logan's music drifts through the wall, a cheerful melody that sounds like a mockery now. My parents' voices float up from below, discussing another family's worthy child. I slip into the bathroom and lock the door. The phone trembles in my hand as I press call. 1 ring, 2 rings, then a familiar voice, rough with sleep. Hello? Aunt Diane? My whisper echoes against the tile. I need help. They're letting me die. The silence that follows stretches like a thread about to snap. When Diane speaks again, her voice carries the same iron certainty I remember from childhood. Tell me everything. The bathroom's fluorescent light hums overhead as I begin to speak, telling my aunt how much a daughter's life is worth to my parents. The answer, it turns out, is less than a brother's tuition. That same night, the moonlight spills across my bedroom floor as I slip essentials into my backpack at 1 a.m. Each item weighs heavy with meaning: 3 changes of clothes, my medical paperwork, the birthday money from Grandma Sarah before she passed, $85 in crisp 20s and a worn 5. The sum of my life fits in a single bag. Outside my window, the Peterson sprinklers tick across their perfect lawn. The sound mirrors the grandfather clock downstairs, counting down the seconds until Diane arrives. I touch the crystal pendant Mom gave me for my 16th birthday, then leave it on the dresser. Some gifts carried too much weight. The third stair from the bottom always creaks. I learned this at 12, sneaking down for midnight cookie raids with Logan. Now I ease my weight to the outer edge, barely breathing. The family portrait watches my descent, Mom and Dad beaming at Logan's Yale sweatshirt while I hover at the edge, half in shadow. The photographer never asked me to move closer. Their bedroom door stands ajar upstairs. Dad's gentle snores float down the hallway, a sound that once meant safety. Now it's the soundtrack to my escape. My hand trembles as I unlatch the front door. The bus station at 2 a.m. houses society's invisible people. A woman in a janitor's uniform dozes in a plastic chair. 2 teenagers share earbuds and worried glances. I clutch my backpack closer, shoulders curved inward. The fluorescent lights cast sickly shadows under my eyes. Diane's headlights pierce the darkness at 2:17 a.m. Her ancient Honda Civic rattles up to the curb, nothing like Dad's polished BMW. She steps out wearing faded jeans and a waitress uniform from her second job. The sight of her hits me like a punch to the chest. While my parents calculated the cost of my life against Logan's future, Diane left work mid-shift to drive 3 hours. She wraps me in a fierce hug that smells of coffee and discount perfume. We don't speak. We don't need to. The weight of everything unsaid fills the space between heartbeats. "Let's get you home, kiddo," she says finally, voice rough with emotion. The word home catches in my throat like broken glass. The highway unspools before us, empty except for long-haul truckers. Talk radio murmurs baseball scores while I scroll through my phone. Mom's message thread with Dr. Carter glows in the darkness. Unfortunately, Dana's situation comes at the worst possible time. Logan's placement remains our priority. Completely understand. These things happen. Better to focus resources where they'll have the most impact. My fingers go numb. They'd already decided. Before the family meeting, before their pretense of considering options, I was a liability to be managed, not a daughter to be saved. "Those vultures," Diane mutters, reading over my shoulder at a red light. "You know I'm selling the Civic, right? Already talked to a buyer." "Diane, no." "Some things matter more than things, Dana." She accelerates as the light turns green. "Your life matters more." She took me to her apartment and both of us were tired, so we went to sleep. We had numerous things to do in the morning. Later in the morning, as I can see through the window, her apartment sits above a Vietnamese restaurant, one room with a Murphy bed and copper pots hanging from the ceiling. The walls burst with color-framed concert posters, strings of paper lanterns, a tapestry of elephants marching across sunset. It's nothing like our tasteful beige living room. Everything here feels alive. "We'll figure out the bed situation later," Diane says, dropping my backpack by a battered coffee table. "First, we document everything. Those texts, the medical records, their refusal to treat you. Everything." My phone buzzes. Mom again. "Your emotional reaction is understandable, but you're upsetting your father. What will we tell the Harringtons at dinner?" "She knows I left," Aunt Diane called her previously. Diane reads it and snorts. I've got 2 words for her, and neither is sorry. She pulls out her own phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "There. Dana is safe. She's getting treatment, I've got her. Let them chew on that." I sink onto her secondhand couch, exhaustion hitting like a wave. The reality of what I've done crashes over me. I've walked away from everything I've ever known. The perfect daughter has finally broken rank. Get some more sleep, Diane says softly. Tomorrow we start fighting back. I curl up under a quilt that smells of lavender and fabric softener. On the kitchen counter, Diane's car keys glint in the streetlight. Tomorrow she'll sell her only reliable possession to help pay for my treatment. The thought should crush me with guilt. Instead, a different feeling unfolds in my chest, the foreign warmth of being valued. For the first time since the diagnosis, I sleep without dreaming of ticking clocks or medical bills. In the morning, I'll face whatever comes next. But today and tonight, in this tiny apartment above a restaurant, I'm not the family disappointment or the expendable child. Today, I'm simply worth saving. A month later, the makeshift hospital room in Diane's apartment smells of antiseptic and fresh bed linens. An IV pole stands sentinel beside my bed, its clear tubing snaking down to the port in my chest. The morning sun streams through uncovered windows, no precious lace curtains here, just honest light warming my skin. Diane hunches over the kitchen table, squinting at medication schedules spread across its scratched surface. Her reading glasses perch on her nose while she scribbles notes about dosage times. Dark circles shadow her eyes from working double shifts at the bookkeeping firm. Your next round starts in 20 minutes, she says, marking another box on our wall calendar. Red X's track my progress like battlefield victories. The nausea hits without warning. I lurch toward the bathroom, my legs shaking. Diane appears at my side, one arm steady around my waist. No words needed, we've done this dance before. Later, curled on the couch with a thin blanket, I watch Diane sort pills into daily containers. My hair has started falling out in clumps, but she never flinches when she looks at me. Unlike Mother, who would have worried more about the social awkwardness of a balding daughter than my survival. A knock at the door breaks our quiet routine. Mrs. Chen from next door stands there holding a covered casserole dish, steam escaping from the corners. For your strength, she says simply, pressing it into my hands before shuffling away. The third neighbor this week, bringing food unasked. Diane's coworker Susan calls during lunch. Take tomorrow off, she tells Diane. I'll cover your shift. That girl needs you more than the accounting books do. The warmth of their kindness fills my chest, spreading like medicine through my veins. These strangers care more about my life than the people who gave me birth. The letter arrives on a Tuesday. Crisp white envelope with Father's law firm's embossed logo. Inside, formal language masks the threat. Return the minor to her legal guardians immediately. The paper trembles in Diane's hands as she reads. They'll try to drain my savings, she says, jaw tight. But they don't know I already sold the car. You're getting better, that's all that matters. Their next attack comes through proxies. Mrs. Harrison, Mother's garden club friend, appears at Diane's door. We're all so worried about Dana. She simpers, peering past Diane into the apartment. Her parents are simply beside themselves. Tell them I'm still breathing, I call from the couch. Despite their best efforts. The woman retreats, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Her report will circulate through their social circle by dinner, embellished with details about our shabby circumstances. I don't expect them to arrive in person. But they do. On a rare good day when I've managed to keep breakfast down. No warning, just the sharp rap of Father's knuckles on the door. They stand in the doorway, foreign beings in their pressed clothes and polished shoes. Mother's pearl necklace catches the light, the same one she wore the morning they sentenced me to death. Dana. Father adjusts his tie. This emotional reaction has gone on long enough. It's time to consider your family responsibilities. I stay seated on the couch, letting them see what their choice has done to me. The weight loss, the pallor, the baseball cap covering my patchy scalp. Mother's hand flies to her throat. Oh dear God, she whispers. What will Dr. Carter think when he hears about this? A laugh bubbles up from my chest, sharp as broken glass. That's what concerns you? Yoshel standing. Now, Dana, Father starts, his lecture voice warming up, but I cut him off. I know exactly what I'm worth to you. My voice stays steady as I reach for the folder beside me. Would you like to see the math? I spread the papers on the coffee table. Their text messages to each other, discussing the unfortunate timing of my illness. Their email to Dr. Carter about prioritizing Logan's placement. The calculations comparing treatment costs to tuition. I kept receipts, I say, tapping each sheet. Every word, every number, every time you chose him over me. Mother sways slightly, face draining of color. You can't possibly mean to. Tell Logan? I meet her eyes. Why not? He deserves to know what his future cost. They retreat without another word, the door clicking shut behind them. In the silence that follows, Diane sits beside me on the couch. You know they won't stop, she says quietly. I gather the papers, sliding them back into the folder. No, but neither will I. That night, after Diane falls asleep in her chair beside my bed, I open my laptop. The cursor blinks in a blank email addressed to Dr. Benjamin Carter. Not a rant, not a plea. Just facts, supported by evidence. The kind of precise documentation he'd appreciate as an academic. Are you sure about this? Diane asks in the morning, reading over my shoulder. It could burn a lot of bridges. I hit send before doubt can take root. They burned the bridge when they decided I wasn't worth saving. I'm just lighting up the wreckage so everyone can see what they did. The IV drips steady beside me, marking time like that grandfather clock in their perfect living room. But this sound means life, not death. This sound means truth. Through the window, morning sun warms my skin. No lace curtains needed here. Just honest light, showing things as they really are. The screen of my laptop glows in the pre-dawn darkness of Diane's apartment. My fingers hover over the keyboard as I reread the email one final time. No accusations, no heated words, just a clinical timeline of events supported by screenshots, medical records, and their own damning text messages. You're sure about this? Diane asks from the doorway, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in her hands. I accept one, breathing in the familiar morning ritual we've built over these months of treatment. The truth doesn't need dramatics. My cursor blinks over the send button. One click to detonate the carefully constructed world of Rivers Educational Consulting. One click to show Dr. Benjamin Carter exactly who he's partnered with all these years. I press send. The next weeks pass in a rhythm of recovery. Pills sorted into morning and evening doses. The ache of healing bones. Small victories marked on Diane's wall calendar with gold star stickers, a touch of whimsy in our medical routine. I focus on getting stronger while that email works its quiet magic. First comes the silence. Dr. Carter's annual education symposium program appears online without their names. Then their consulting firm vanishes from the top educational directories. Social media fills with announcements of Carter's exclusive new partnerships, their absence speaking volumes. You could post about what they did, Diane suggests one evening as we scroll through local news. People should know. I shake my head, watching another family's smiling photo with Dr. Carter appear on my feed. They built their reputation on appearances. Losing that matters more than any public shame. The landline rings on a Tuesday evening, an unexpected sound in our cell phone world. Diane answers, then holds it out to me with raised eyebrows. Dana? Logan's voice cracks through the receiver. What's going on? Mom and Dad said you were being difficult about some minor treatment, but their story keeps changing. My heart pounds against my ribs. Did they tell you how much the treatment cost? What? No, they just said you were. He stops. Dana, how much? $58,000. The number still tastes bitter. Less than your first year at Princeton. The silence stretches so long I check if the call dropped. Then Logan whispers, They chose my tuition over your life? Now you understand. I'm transferring to state. Papers rustle in the background. I already started the paperwork. They can't. I won't let them. Logan, breathe. I'm so sorry. His voice breaks. I never knew I was their excuse for letting you die. After we hang up, I curl into the secondhand armchair Diane rescued from a yard sale. The fabric smells like lavender sachets and sunshine. Through the window, mountains paint purple shadows against the sunset. My newly strong fingers trace the port scar on my chest, a map of survival I never expected to bear. Diane doesn't hover, but I hear her puttering in the kitchen, the familiar clink of mugs and spoons creating comfort through routine. On her wall calendar, tomorrow's square holds another gold star waiting to be earned. Not for medical milestones anymore, but for my first day volunteering at the local tutoring center. The morning brings crisp autumn air and nervous energy. I arrange donated textbooks while other volunteers trickle in. A boy slumps at the table before me, algebra homework crumpled in his fist. Nobody gets it, he mutters. They all say I'm not trying hard enough. I settle into the chair across from him. Want to know a secret? Sometimes the people who should believe in you don't, but that doesn't make you less worthy. His eyes lift to mine. How do you know? Because I lived it. I smooth out his homework. Now, let's prove them wrong together. Word spreads. More students find their way to my table. The overlooked, the struggling, the ones others deemed not worth the effort. Their parents start requesting me specifically. You reach them, they say. You understand. Each small victory feels like redemption. Every light of understanding in a student's eyes builds something new from the ashes of what my parents destroyed. I may not have a college degree, but I have something better. The hard-won wisdom of knowing what it means to fight for your own worth. The letter arrives on a Thursday. Logan's familiar scrawl on the envelope. Inside, I find a photo. Our parents' sprawling house replaced by a modest condo listing. Their consulting firm's website now leads to a 404 error. Logan's Princeton acceptance letter tucked away in favor of a state school teaching program. His note reads, I'm trying to become someone you might want to know again. I pin the photo next to Diane's calendar, where tomorrow's square waits empty. No gold star yet earned, but endless possibility in the blank space. Sometimes, when your world shatters, you build something better from the pieces. In the end, my parents' betrayal gave me an unexpected gift. It showed me exactly who I am when everything else falls away. Truth has a way of creating its own justice. Not in grand gestures or public denouncements, but in the quiet collapse of carefully constructed facades. In the end, my parents' reputation crumbled not because I shouted their sins to the world, but because I simply stopped protecting their lies. I pick up my phone, type a quick message to Logan. Start with the truth. We'll see where it leads. I heal in my own way, slowly, until I completely recover after 3 years, both physically and emotionally. 3 years later, the bell above Second Chance Learning's front door chimes as another student rushes in from the spring rain. I pause, hanging the last award certificate on our wall of victories, smiling as Tommy Chen waves his latest math test in the air. His grin stretches wider than the Rocky Mountains visible through our storefront windows. Miss Rivers, look, a 92! The joy in his voice echoes off walls that no longer smell of Diane's curry dinners. Our little tutoring center has grown from a corner of her apartment into this sunlit space where second chances bloom like wildflowers after a Colorado storm. Outstanding work, Tommy. I stepped down from the stepladder, accepting his enthusiastic high five. What did your dad say? He cried. Tommy's voice drops to a whisper. Actually cried, said no other tutor ever believed I could do more than pass. The words settle in my chest like a familiar warmth. 3 years have passed since I made that first desperate call to Diane, since my parents calculated my life against Logan's tuition and found me wanting. Now, at 20, I've built something they never imagined possible, a place where worth isn't measured in dollars or degrees. Diane breezes past with an armful of donated textbooks, her bookkeeper's pencil still tucked behind her ear despite our success. Dana, the Richardson Foundation called. They want to double their supply contribution next quarter. Before I can respond, the bell chimes again. The sound freezes my blood. My mother stands in the doorway, designer shoes replaced by sensible department store pumps. Father hovers behind her, his tailored suits exchanged for khakis that speak of downsizing and desperation. They look smaller somehow, diminished, like antique furniture stripped of its finish. I turn back to Tommy, keeping my voice steady. Practice those geometry proofs we talked about. I'll check them tomorrow. He scampers off to the study area where other students bend over worksheets, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. My parents drift closer, careful to maintain a public facade of casual interest. Dana, Mother's voice wavers. You look well. I continue straightening a stack of practice tests. We're quite busy. If you're interested in enrolling a student, our waitlist information is by the door. Please. Father steps forward, his voice pitched low. We need to talk. We've lost everything, the business, the house, Dr. Carter's connections. Dried up when people learned how you calculate a child's value? The words slip out cool and precise as surgical instruments. That must have been difficult for you. Mother's fingers twist her now ringless hands. We were wrong. So terribly wrong. But you've built something wonderful here. Surely that means I succeeded without you. I meet their gaze directly, my voice carrying no further than the space between us. You told me I wasn't worth saving. I'm just returning the favor. The silence stretches between us like a closing door. A student's parent waves from across the room, and I turn toward her with a genuine smile. Mrs. Anderson, how is Jessica's college application coming along? When I glance back, my parents have retreated. Through the window, I watch them shuffle down the sidewalk, shoulders bent under the weight of consequences they never expected to bear. Diane appears at my elbow, her presence solid as mountain stone. You okay? I survey our growing space, the walls lined with success stories, the tables filled with students others had written off, the future we've built from the ashes of betrayal. I am now. The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds, painting golden stripes across our wall of victories. A new certificate waits to be hung, bearing the name of a girl whose parents called her hopeless last month. Below her name, I've written the same words I read on every victory. Worth everything. Tommy's voice rises from the study area, patiently explaining a math concept to a younger student. The sound washes over me like a blessing, proof that sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living well. I pick up my teaching binder, filled with lesson plans and progress notes. Ready for the 4 o'clock group? Diane squeezes my shoulder. Always. We move toward the cluster of waiting students, their faces bright with possibility. Behind us, the door stays firmly closed on the past, while ahead stretches a future built on a simple truth. Every life deserves someone who believes it's worth saving. The bell chimes again as another student enters, and I smile. Time to create another second chance. The morning sun catches the rim of my coffee cup as I stand at our lakefront cottage window. 5 years. The medical port scar beneath my collarbone has faded to a silvery reminder, but the memories remain sharp as ever. Behind me, Diane hums while arranging fresh flowers, her movements unhurried and content. Look what arrived, she calls, holding up an envelope postmarked from Venice. Inside, glossy photos capture her standing before the Grand Canal, wearing the bright coral sweater I insisted she buy for the trip. Her first passport stamp at 63, paid for by the Learning Center Success. My phone buzzes. Another message from Logan. Got the teaching certification. Still hoping there might be room at second chance when I finish. I let it sit unanswered, the way I sometimes need to with him. He's trying, but healing happens on its own schedule. The kettle whistles, and I pour hot water over Diane's favorite Earl Grey, breathing in the bergamot steam. Through the window, I watch boats cut white trails across the lake. We bought this cottage last spring after the Learning Center's expansion. 3 bedrooms, weathered cedar siding, and a wraparound porch where displaced kids can find refuge, just like I once did. Hand me that photo album, Diane says, settling into her usual chair. I want to put these Venice pictures somewhere special. I retrieve the leather-bound album from the shelf, its pages thick with 5 years of transformed lives. My fingers trace the progression, the first tiny office space we rented, students' graduation photos, the ribbon cutting for our expanded location. Each image tells a story of someone society had written off. Remember that first morning in my apartment? Diane asks, carefully mounting a photo of herself on the Rialto Bridge. You looked so lost, but your spine was steel. I wasn't the only lost one, I remind her, thinking of how she worked triple shifts at her bookkeeping job to help fund my treatments. You risked everything for me. And look what you made of that risk. She gestures around the sun-filled room, then reaches for her phone. Speaking of which, I recognize the familiar swish of a social media post being uploaded. Diane rarely shares online, but when she does, it carries weight. She turns the screen toward me. There she stands, wineglass raised against the Venetian sunset, her silver hair catching the light. The caption reads, "To my niece, who gave me the life I never dreamed I could have." My throat tightens. They'll see it, you know, the family gossip network never sleeps. Good. Diane's eyes sparkle with quiet satisfaction. Let them see what choosing love over appearances looks like. The afternoon sun warms the porch boards beneath our feet as we move outside with fresh tea. A stack of applications for our second location sits in my lap, more students needing second chances, more lives waiting to be transformed. Any regrets? Diane asked suddenly. About college, I mean. Your parents were so fixated on academic pedigree. I touched the spot where the medical port once channeled poison and healing through my veins. Funny thing about near-death experiences, they clarify what matters. I didn't just survive. I built a life for me, and for the only person who ever believed I deserved to live. The breeze carries the scent of approaching autumn. Below our porch, purple asters bloom where we scattered wildflower seeds in spring. My phone chimes with a message from Maria, one of our first students, now crushing her freshman year at State. "Prof loved my paper," her text exclaims. "Thank you for teaching me I was worth investing in." I smile, remembering the angry 14-year-old who stormed into our center, convinced she was too stupid for school. Now she's tutoring other struggling students between classes, passing forward the belief someone once placed in her. The setting sun paints the lake in amber and rose. I stand at the water's edge, letting the small waves lap at my feet. Behind me, our cottage glows with warmth and purpose. The medical bills that once threatened my life now hang framed in my office. A reminder that sometimes being deemed worthless by those who should love you becomes its own kind of freedom. My phone buzzes again. Another student success story, another life reconstructed from the ashes of someone else's judgment. I think of my parents and their downsized house, their reputation in tatters, still wondering how their careful calculations went so wrong. But that's not my story anymore. My story lives in the walls of our learning center, in the eyes of students discovering their own worth, in the peaceful breathing of my aunt as she dozes in her porch chair, Venice photos scattered across her lap. My story is the price of freedom, paid in full, with interest earned in changed lives. 5 years ago, I learned exactly how little I was worth to the people who should have treasured me most. Today, I know my true value, measured not in dollars or degrees, but in the ripples of transformation spreading outward from that first terrible choice between death and dignity. I turn back toward our home, toward the light spilling from windows that hold no lace curtains, no ticking clocks, no echoes of calculated betrayal. In the end, it turns out the most worthwhile investment was the one I made in myself and in everyone else the world had marked as expendable. Tomorrow, I'll review more applications, guide more students, build more bridges to possibility. But tonight, I simply stand in the gathering dusk, letting the water whisper its endless song of renewal. Some people call it revenge, living well. I call it justice, served one changed life at a time. The moon rises over the lake, full and bright, casting a silver path across the water. Behind me, Diane calls that dinner's ready. I smile, knowing our table will likely hold at least one extra plate for whatever struggling soul found their way to our door today. That's the thing about second chances, they multiply when you share them. My footsteps leave brief impressions in the damp sand as I walk toward home. Each print fills with water, then disappears, like the old wounds that shaped but no longer define me. Above the door, a handmade sign reads, "Welcome," in a dozen languages, proof that family isn't always who you're born to, but who you choose to become. Inside, the cottage rings with Diane's laughter as she reads another message from her Venice tour guide. Life pulses here, real and imperfect and gloriously free. I pause in the doorway, watching moonlight silver her hair, thinking how sometimes the greatest triumph isn't in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. The scent of herb bread and possibility fills our kitchen. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own victories, its own opportunities to extend the gift of belief to someone who needs it. But tonight, in this moment, I am exactly where I'm meant to be, helping write new endings to old stories of worth and worthlessness, one precious life at a time.